Hello everyone, welcome. This is your elective subject hardware and PC maintenance. So now let us see the selecting and installing CPUs. First of all, selecting CPU. So when selecting CPU, you need to make certain you get one that the motherboard can accommodate. So that means your motherboard of your system should be compatible with the CPU or this processor. So if you are not buying a mother card along with the CPU, then get the right CPU for the intended purpose. Okay. So here there is one special features, product highlights of a motherboard. Okay. So LGA 1155 socket. So that is the motherboard. LGA 1155 socket for, so it supports all Intel processors like Intel Core 7, Core i7, Core i5, Core i3 processors. Okay, so LGA 1155 socket, it's a motherboard. It supports all these Intel i7, Core i5, i3 processors. Okay, so now the installing CPUs, that means installing the processors. So all CPUs and sockets are keyed, so you can't insert them incorrectly. So they are designed so that you can't install them incorrectly. So sockets of motherboard and CPUs are perfectly designed so that you cannot insert them incorrectly. So see they have given two pictures here. So here the pins do not make a perfect square, isn't it? So in this the picture, the left side, the pins do not make a perfect square. Okay, so the pins do not make a perfect square because a few are missing there. And here the CPU, the right one, the mark at corner, the corner mark is there, that is just to make the installation correct. Okay, so there are tiny markings, so you can line the CPU up properly with the socket. So these are made to make you correctly insert them. Okay, so in both socket styles, you release the retaining mechanism by pushing the little lever down slightly and then away from the socket. You next raise the arm fully and then move the retaining bracket. Okay, see, this is the lever, you should push it. See, let us watch one video of installing CPUs. Okay, So now cooling. Cooling. CPUs work very hard and thus require power to function. So in electrical terms, CPUs consume wattage or watts, a unit of electrical power. Okay. So just like a 100-watt bulb consumes power whenever it's on. So to increase the capability of CPUs to handle complex code, CPU manufacturers have added a lot of microscopic transistors over the years. So the more transistors the CPU has, the more power they need, and thus the hotter they get. CPUs don't tolerate heat, and modern processors need active cooling solutions just to function at all. So almost every CPU uses a combination of heat sink and fan assembly to wick heat away from the CPU. Okay, so CPU, it gets hot, so we need the cooling. So this is the fan. So now troubleshooting CPUs. See, troubleshooting CPU issues falls into two categories: overheating and catastrophic failures. So once a CPU is installed properly and functioning, it rarely causes problems. The only exception is when you ask a CPU to do too much too quickly. So here, so the majority of problems with the CPUs come from faulty installation or environmental issues that cause overheating. So symptoms of overheating are first one, too much external paste, too much thermal paste. So thermal paste is needed for CPU fan. Thermal paste is applied on CPU fan, but here too much thermal paste can impede the flow of heat from the CPU to the heat sink and cause the CPU to heat up rapidly. So all modern CPUs have built-in fail-safes that tell them to shut down before getting damaged by heat. So okay, so CPUs, there are built-in functions. They will instruct the CPUs to shut down before the overheat damages the CPU. So second one, not enough thermal paste or thermal paste is spread unevenly can cause the CPU to heat up and shut itself down, consequently shut itself down. Okay, so not enough thermal paste also, it may cause the CPU to heat up. One more, first one is too much thermal, and here not enough thermal or unevenly spread thermal can cause CPU's heat up. Okay, and third one is failure to connect the fan power to motherboard can cause the CPU to heat up and shut itself down. So here fan and heat sink installation failures can be tricky. So this CPU needs adequate ventilation. The CPU fan is essential, of course, but the inside of the case also needs to get hotter out through one or more exhaust fans, and cool air in through the front vent. So if the intake vent is clogged or so fans stop working or are blocked somehow, the inside of the case can heat up and overwhelm the CPU cooling devices. So it will burden the CPU cooling devices if something happens gone wrong, and it will overwhelm the CPU cooling devices. So this will result in a system running slowly or spontaneously rebooting, that means restarting. Okay, so if your CPU has any overheat problem, your system will run slowly. There is in a system running slowly, so it will result in a system running slowly and rebooting. Okay, rebooting, it's a restarting. So next one is RAM. RAM is random access memory, stores programs and data currently being used by the CPU. Okay, the maximum amount of programs and data that a piece of RAM can store is measured in units of bytes. So RAMs are always measured in bytes. So some modern PCs have many millions, even billions of bytes of RAM. So RAM is measured in units called megabytes or gigabytes. So average PC will have from 1 to 4 GB RAM. So and PCs may have more or less. So each piece of RAM is called a stick. So one common type of stick found in today's PC is called Dual Inline Memory Module or DIMM. So this figure shows the DIMM used in PCs.